I used to think I had absolutely no willpower when it came to food, especially chocolate, biscuits and cakes. It was such a struggle, and I just always used to blame myself and feel really guilty every time I ate those foods, and I couldn't stop eating those foods. So in this video, I'm going to share with you how I managed to understand what those cravings were really telling me, and then was able to heal that pattern so that I stopped overeating them, stopped binging on them, and was able to have a peaceful relationship with them without also excluding them from my food choices altogether. So the first point to share with you about cravings is always approach them with compassion. That might seem really hard to do if at the moment you're mostly criticizing yourself, but the aim of intuitive eating is always to cultivate a mindset around curiosity and compassion. So you're almost sort of putting your sort of curious spectacles on, so to speak, and just sort of observing the patterns. And so you might start to notice, oh, I'm just curious about, you know, how I'm eating this particular snack or this meal. Oh, I'm curious about this craving. It's a really helpful tool that can shift you from feeling anxious and guilty and blaming to being just sort of on the other side of that, just curiously observing your patterns. And it's a lot easier to take action when you're coming from a place of curiosity than it is when you're coming from a place of criticism. So with cravings, the first thing to do is just observe the patterns. So you might observe that, you know, over a day, you might observe it over just one meal, and the more that you practice, the more that you'll see what patterns are building up. And there's three main causes of cravings. So the first one is actually if you're not eating enough. So in intuitive eating, we teach you a hunger and fullness scale, so you can start to learn a little bit more about, you know, what your hunger and fullness cues are telling you, and what can happen if you're noticing that you're eating a lot and you can't stop. And if sometimes it happens later in the day, it can be a sign that you've underfueled, so you perhaps hadn't eaten much at breakfast or you skipped lunch. And what happens there is that your food cravings are actually intense hunger that's causing you to eat more than you would normally eat. And that's like a rebound effect from not fueling yourself enough. The second point is if you've got quite a lot of food rules and you are mentally restricting. So if you're going through your day and you're often sort of having a snack thinking, oh, I shouldn't have this, or you're having a snack and thinking, oh God, how many calories is in that, or you're having a snack and thinking, oh gosh, there's too much fat in it, then all of those things start to have an effect on that sort of rebellious action of the more you restrict it and say you shouldn't have it, the more then you actually want it. And then often when you do go and have that food that you said you weren't going to have, it's that feast or famine mindset. I'll have as much as I can now because I'm not going to have it tomorrow because I'll start the diet again. So having an awareness around that and just noticing those food rules, if there are some there, and just making a little note of them again can be incredibly helpful, just to get clear on what is it that's creating, what's the trigger that's creating this food pattern that you're finding unhelpful if it results in overeating or binge eating perhaps. And then the third option that would be contributing to your cravings is if you're emotionally eating. And sometimes you might not realise, you know, at the moment, you might not think that there are any emotions going on. But what you can start to do is, before you eat, as a small practice, just check in with how you're feeling. So sometimes just putting like your hand on your heart is quite a nice way just to connect with yourself, and just pause and then just ask yourself if there's any emotion there. Sometimes it's easier to firstly just notice how your body's feeling physically, because usually for every physical sensation there's an emotion that goes with it. So you might just be sat there and think, gosh, my chest feels really tight, or you know, my neck feels really tight, or I've got like a tingly sensation in my legs. You know, it could be anything that's personal to you. And then from there, and let's just see if there's an emotion then that is behind that. So it could be fear, it could be anxiety, it could be sadness, sometimes it's a positive emotion and it could be excitement. And again, you don't have to change your eating pattern just because you recognize the emotion, but you're just going to build up some awareness of what sort of emotions, if emotional eating is present, might be then affecting this feeling of cravings and maybe feeling out of control around food. So I hope that's helped, and if you want to dive a bit deeper into decoding your cravings, I've created a lovely resource that goes further into what I've shared in this video, and then also gives you some simple action steps that you can start to take to heal any of those sources of cravings. So whether that's to do with under eating, so not fueling yourself enough through the day, whether that's through mental restrictions like food rules, or whether it's coming from emotions, so like eating from an emotional standpoint rather than from physical hunger. And just to reassure you as we get to the end of the video, just remind yourself you've not done anything wrong with your eating patterns. You know, there's nothing wrong with how you've coped with life until now with food, but there are so many wonderful ways to support you so that you can feel the best you've ever felt without having to go near any diets. And the ripple effect this work has on your life is just absolutely wonderful. So I hope you found that helpful, and I will see you in the next video.